So we're back at F1 USGP 2024 quota. Um, felt longer than 3 weeks. I don't know why. It just seemed like it took forever for racing to start back, but start back it did. Um, Good race, not like wow, but it had its exciting moments. Certainly the beginning and the end were exciting. In the middle, it kind of, I don't want to say dragged on, but there wasn't that too much happening. Even though the midfield did give us a fairly entertaining amount of excitement for the race during the duration of the race. But the real salient points happened at the beginning and at the end. First, let's congratulate Ferrari, Scuderia Ferrari, SF. Why? I mean, I like that team. They have their feelings, but I like that team. Traditional team, F1, through the years. Leclerc drove flawless would be an understatement. Brilliant pass. Yeah, well, he was on fire from the sprint. I mean, great drive on the sprint. Great drive from Sainz as well. Both of them are performing at a high level, and the car is clearly Ferrari hit a home run with the setup. Didn't bring any upgrades, but what they did bring, they got it right. The setup was perfect for the track. Now we saw this from the sprint, so we this should come as a surprise to no one. The pace that Ferrari had. I mean, they clearly had it right, and the drivers exploited it, and they got their just rewards. First class job, well done, congratulations to them. Vasseur again showing his worth. This new Indian guy, Ravin Jain or something like that in strategy, doing well, not making any mistakes. One can only hope this is not a too much of a track specific performance jump. I don't think it is. I mean, they've been on an upward trend. They've had the odd, hiccup, but for the most part, Ferrari has been doing well the last few races, and their drivers have been confident. You hear it from Sainz and you hear it from Leclerc. So I'm not surprised. And in fact, I would argue that from a Constructors' Championship point of view, Red Bull should be worried. I think Ferrari is going to overtake Red Bull. It's a very real possibility that Ferrari will come second in the Manufacturers' Championship. The truth is, Perez is just not pulling his weight. Red Bull is fighting with one hand tied behind their back. Verstappen is the only point scorer they have, whereas with their main two rivals, and we can even include Mercedes as a rival as well, but for the sake of this discussion, Ferrari and McLaren are the two big ones. They have two drivers each scoring points consistently and scoring points high up. Red Bull can't say the same thing. Basically, it's Max, and if Max doesn't do well, they're dead. And that's about it. Now, when Max was winning everything, that points haul was sufficient to keep them ahead, even with the other teams scoring well. However, in a circumstance where the other teams are also scoring and winning, Max's points he can't carry the team. It's just not possible. And so Red Bull are really paying the price now for their loyalty to Perez. Maybe we should be specific. Horner is paying the price for his loyalty to Perez, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't a total or Red Bull decision. I think you can't believe everything you hear in terms of rumor. I mean, everybody has an opinion and an agenda. And Red Bull is kind of like the beating stick often of the paddock in terms of people pointing fingers. But there's no doubt that Marco, if he had his way, Perez would probably have been out. And so this is a decision that rests squarely with Horner, and they're paying the price for it. We'll see. So, Ferrari, numero uno, superb job. Superb. I'm gonna probably refer to my notes, because the truth is, I have a few things to say. This is probably not gonna be the shortest of videos, because I have a few things to say. There's a lot to unpack because it's not just about what happened in this race. It has ramifications for the rest of the season and the two different championships at stake, constructors and drivers. So Leclerc home run first. Sainz brilliant second. Can't argue that. Spectacular 1-2 from Ferrari. Third, Verstappen. Man, I tell you what, love him or hate him, I keep saying this. Flawless performance again. Flawless in the sprint. Probably would have had pole in qualifying if that thing didn't happen with Russell. And brilliant driving in this race. The car was clearly not on. I mean, it was nowhere to where it was in the sprint. They clearly had made a setup change that did not work, unlike what Ferrari did, which worked great. It was probably reminiscent of Mercedes, where they just went totally in the wrong direction and went backward. In this case with Red Bull, they didn't go totally wrong, but clearly they did something wrong. The car was definitely not the same as it was in the sprint, and the tire degradation was obviously an issue, especially in the later part of the race, and it showed. However, Verstappen just, I don't know, that guy is like a robot, just doesn't make mistakes. When you compare, when you look at the pressure that Leclerc put on Piastri in Singapore, you look at the pressure Norris put on Verstappen this race, and then you compare it, for example, to when Leclerc put Norris under pressure in the sprint, it's just no comparison. Norris just, in Jamaica, was crumble like a dry crackers. You know, Norris don't have it. He just don't have it. Him fast when he has the track in front of him and he has the car under him. But honestly, when it comes to the crunch and you squeeze him, sorry, maybe next year, but I don't see it happening for him this year at all. He just don't have it. Verstappen was great. Don't be fooled by all the noise about it. That first corner move, on point, perfectly legitimate. Even Sainz and Leclerc was talking about it in the press conference. Nothing is wrong with that. Everybody would have done the same thing, and it's all legal. And on that what it was, fifth to last lap, I don't remember the exact lap number now. Nothing was wrong with that either. It's hard. It might not be fair, but there's nothing illegal about it. The fact of the matter is, you're not supposed to pass on the outside, on the outside of the white line. That's illegal. You can't argue with it. It is clear in black and white rule. And the fact is, Lando was the overtaking car. And if he's overtaking and he ends up across the white line, it's an illegal pass, and he has to give the position back. Additionally, he was behind when he at apex. I've watched the replay 100 times over. The fact is, he was a little bit behind at the apex. So in no way is that illegal. Cannot be considered a legal pass. And I'm going to say this now. He knew it was he should have given the position back, and I'll tell you why I said that. In the heat of the instant at the moment, he was angry, of course. But if you heard his statement on the last lap, it was very telling. When he said to the team, well, I guess we should have given that position back. And he didn't say it in anger. He said it in resignation. He knew that the pass was not legitimate, and he knew he should have given the position back. And here's the part that pisses me off. Not just with him now for not doing that, because as I said, he's a driver. Nobody's gonna do that voluntarily. Just, you know, especially in the heat at the moment. I'm gonna blame his team for that, but I'm gonna come back to that in a second. If he had given the position back in the instant, as by the following corner, he had 5 laps to continue to pressure Verstappen. And I can tell you, Verstappen's tires were done, especially the fronts. They were done. Verstappen had nothing left. The fact is, once Lando passed him, he put on like 4.8 seconds on him, right? 4.something seconds before the end of the race, which means he had pace in hand. Verstappen had to be driving like crazy just to stay within that 5-second gap to make sure that when Norris got the penalty, which everybody, it seems, except his team, knew that he was going to get, that Verstappen had to stay within 5 seconds to make sure that he wouldn't hurt the position, right? So clearly Norris had pace. If Norris had just dropped back a second, he probably would have passed Verstappen by the next corner, or certainly within that lap. because he had pace in hand. He had an overwhelming speed advantage with the DRS. He could have easily made the pass. That was a massive error in judgment, and I'm not blaming him because, again, you're the driver, you're in the heat at the moment. Your thought process at that point is just to get ahead, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. I can relate to that. I understand what he was going through, and I have no, I have no problem with his position on it. However, his team massively let him know. Massively, epically let him know. But it is what it is, and he came, let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to refer to notes, as I said, because I have, a few things to say. Midfield. The midfield. Well, let me just touch briefly on Piastri before I get to midfield. I think Piastri just didn't get it right. I also maybe wonder if the team's really just focusing on Norris now, making sure that which I actually wouldn't have a problem with. So it is what it is. But Piastri just didn't seem to have his be on his A game at all this weekend, and it showed. Neither in the sprint nor in the race. He just couldn't seem to get it together. I don't know. It is what it is. Midfield, I tell you, midfield was very, very impressive. Hulkenberg, Lawson, Colapinto, I tell you, really good racing. The rookies are just really impressing me. I'm very happy to see the progression in F1. I think when Beerman joins the pack next year, it's going to be awesome. I'm just really happy. And Antonelli, these young guys are it's not just that they're fast. Listen, speed is not related to experience. Speed is just speed, right? So I'm not dwelling on the lack of experience to say I'm surprised at their speed. That's not at all. What I am surprised at, however, is where you think the lack of experience would actually have a effect, which is just racecraft, strategy, procedures, just the myriad of things that Formula One entails, of being a Formula One driver, learning all the steps, learning all the procedures, bearing all the things in mind, tire management, everything. Very, very, very impressive showing from the rookies. And if you look at Tsunoda and Albon as two examples, they must be like, damn, I mean, they're looking over their shoulders because these guys are not coming to play around. I'm telling you, they're not coming to play around. The Haas were good, as I said, with Hulkenberg. I think Magnussen was a little off, but still, Haas has made a decent step. And Alpine, I mean, Gasly was on fire. Gasly was on fire all weekend. Gasly was great in qualifying, not bad in the sprint. I tell you, it just makes you wonder, what's not bad at all, I have to say. I was looking. Gasly impressed me this weekend, I should say. Sauber, flailing around the back as always. Benotto is now in charge. Now, I've given Benotto his fair share of stick, for the foolishness at Ferrari over the years. But the truth is, even though, and I say this with no apology, I thought he was a terrible manager at Ferrari. He was a brilliant technical director. The fact is, he built them a car that could have won. The fact is, in 2022, Ferrari should have won. Ferrari had the fastest car in 22. When Verstappen won that championship in 22, he was lucky. And he was lucky. Not really lucky in the sense where he has his skills and he drove for it. But there was no doubt that if Ferrari had gotten their strategy right, Leclerc could have won in 22. Because the truth is, Ferrari had a better car than Red Bull in 22. There's no question in my mind about that. Right? And it was the strategy that let them down. And that car is very much a product of Matteo Binotto. So I think it will be interesting to see what happens at Sauber if he can weave, sprinkle some of his technical dust on that and with Audi and see where that goes. That's gonna be interesting. Gonna touch now. So that's kind of the race. I'm gonna touch now on a couple points that have kind of sprung up out of what has happened in the race. So let me touch back now on the whole Verstappen and Norris incident. The truth is that, again, by the rule, I don't care what if it's how you feel about whether it's fair or nice or whatever. That don't play a role in Formula One. This is professional sport. Is it legal? And it was. That's one of the things that I think Max does very well. Perhaps one of the best in the game at that. He's a very intelligent guy, and he knows the rules very, very well. And he has a almost supernatural level of spatial awareness of his car and where his competitors are. He knows exactly where to place his car, where the boundary lines are, and he has, I guess, really as a professional athlete, his peripheral vision and so on. He can look, he's paying attention to what he's doing in front of him, but he has the ability to be aware of, in his mirrors, of what the attacker is doing. And he knows what position their car is in and where to put his car. And I've seen him do it over and over and over. Now again, you can argue about the fairness of it. That is irrelevant. Who cares? Doesn't matter. That's just an opinion. It's what the rule says. And the fact is, Norris was the overtaker. He did go over the white line. Norris was the overtaker. He was not ahead at the apex. There's just no debating that. Those are crystal clear rules and guidelines in the FIA rulebook. So it was a foregone conclusion. And if you listen to any of the commentators, as biased, Sky is as biased as it can get. They knew it immediately. They were like, he needs to give the place back. It was clear he was not ahead at the apex, and he had to give the place back. He didn't, and I'm going to go back to this now. That is on Brown and Stella. Now, I've spoken about this before. I don't have a high regard for those two guys. I view them in a worse light even than Horner, who I dislike a lot. But Brown and Stella are turning into two absolute idiots. The hypocrisy is unreal. Now, if you want to be a team leader, you're throwing stones at other teams. That, we can argue about, again, just like with the rule of the passing thing, we can argue about whether it's fair or right or hypocritical. But it doesn't change the fact that you can say it if you want. But let me tell you what I don't like. When you do stupid things now where you allow your arrogance to affect your driver. Because I can tell you this. Brown is a racer. Make no mistake, he is a racer. Stella was Michael Schumacher's race engineer. These are not people who don't understand the rules. Okay? They very much are aware of the rules. They should have immediately come on the radio and told Norris to give the place back. The fact that they didn't, they are one. When they look back at this race and wonder why they came out in the worst for points, look in the mirror. They are the reason why Norris is now at an 11-point deficit per race as opposed to 9 points at the beginning of the weekend. They are the reason for that. And Norris needs to look and listen and think and take a step back and look at where the problem is. Right? That leads me directly to the second point about Brown and his incessant attacks on Red Bull with the ride height thing. Now let me tell you something. Like Red Bull or not, that ride height issue is nonsense. From the first time you understood how the thing was adjusted, you knew it was a non-issue. Parc Fermé is heavily regulated. CCTV cameras are placed on the cars 24 hours. It's constant. There's no let up in the surveillance. There is no way under the sun that device can be adjusted without people seeing it being adjusted. It simply cannot. Okay? And the fact of the matter is, all the teams, everyone, don't be fooled by the way they word these things. The British media is pathetic and Brown is just a liar. All cars have the ability to adjust the ride height. The difference is the Red Bull one is adjusted internally, but it's not internal from the cockpit, as in where the driver sits. It's internal through some access panels that you have to remove and use a tool and get down to it, down by the pedals, and then turn on it. You have to use like a double jointed extension that you turn and go forward under the pedal. That is not something accessible readily. Okay, that requires some disassembly. Again, there is no way under the sun that could be done under a CCTV camera and nobody sees it. So it is a non-issue. However, let me tell you what I think is an issue. I don't know if Red Bull and Ferrari have really gotten any faster. I think McLaren has gotten slower. And that mini DRS that them had to take off because that was illegal. They wouldn't be changing a wing if they didn't think it was illegal or if they didn't think FIA was going to ban them for it. Right? That is what I think Brown is deflecting from. He does not want the attention on the fact that his car might have been illegal for quite a few races. Right? Again, I go back to the fact that Leclerc was on Piastri lap after lap after lap in Singapore with DRS. Now, Ferrari is not a slow car in a straight line. Let's be crystal clear. Ferrari is not slow in a straight line. And he could not connect. Look at the length of the straight there. He could not connect with Piastri. Right? On those long straights. Even with DRS. Baku, I mean, not Singapore, in Baku. Now that tells me that where is McLaren getting that speed from? Obviously it's that wing. The video evidence was crystal clear. Now how many races back should we go with Zach Brown and what McLaren was doing with that wing? You know, so I think it's a hallmark of people who are cheating is when they point fingers at other people. Right? You know, yeah, you're trying to, all he's doing is distracting from what he's been doing. Right? And of course, because he has, you know, the British media on his side, it makes it easy. But the reality is, it is, you know, I don't see anything there. It's just garbage, right? So, you know, it is what it is. Mercedes really disappointed me this race because they've been so competitive the last few races. I mean, I am shocked at this backward step. It's like the car is on it's like you're literally balancing, you know, Occam's razor. You're literally balancing on the edge of a razor blade with the Mercedes. It's either perfect and it's fast or it's zero. I mean, let's face reality. Russell and Hamilton are superb drivers. They're top ranked, okay? Those two guys don't get thrown off of the track because of incompetence. That car there's something fundamentally wrong with the handling balance of that car. And the fact that the two of them left the track at the same corner tells me that it's something to do with how the chassis is set up. Mercedes just got it wrong. Then they really, I mean, there's a lot more that can be said on the whole thing with Mercedes and COTA and, you know, just how the whole team, their success based upon their engine advantage and, you know, the depth of their chassis engineering and era that they should have had and all of that. There's a whole world of discussion about that whole thing and where they're at now. But what I can tell is this. It's a bad car that caused what I saw this weekend. I'm not blaming either of the two drivers for that. Right? Let's briefly touch on Perez and why I mentioned it earlier that he's not carrying his weight and he's going to be Red Bull's downfall in the constructors. Let's put that Mercedes situation in perspective. Mercedes with a shockingly bad car and George Russell starting from pit lane still managed to beat Perez. On what planet? What is Perez doing? No, seriously, what is Perez doing? Look at what Verstappen is doing with the same car. And nobody, even the most rabid, Red Bull hater and Lewis Hamilton fan, could never be thinking still that Red Bull is sabotaging Perez. Because right now they're losing hand over fist in the constructors. Right? And about to fire him as a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned. So, there can be no question that they're trying to sabotage Perez. So clearly, he's just not pulling his weight. Verstappen is in the same car, wiping the floor. So, what is Perez's excuse? Really and truly, what is his excuse at this point? You know what it is? There is none. He has none. All right? Lando. We're going to finish on Lando Norris. I don't want to say that the championship is over, but the championship is over. If I'm wrong, and it's so be it. But I just don't see it. The deficit is now 11 points something, 11 and a half points or something like that he's going to have to score over Verstappen every race before the end of the season if he wants to win the championship by just 1 point. Not impossible. Let's not forget, we can easily have a DNF or something. But let's not forget too, that the DNF can be on his part as well. It's not like it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Max that has the DNF. So, I think it's looking slim. It's looking slim. I just don't see it. And worse, if in fact McLaren has truly fallen off a little bit with their performance by having to remove that wing now, and if Red Bull has been making some steps with some upgrades, it's gonna just make it worse. In other words, Verstappen may still not be faster, because I don't think the Red Bull is a faster car than McLaren still. However, I think the gap has now come back down a bit. So, whereas Red Bull had a big advantage in the beginning, McLaren had a big advantage in the middle, now the two of them are far closer. Okay? And if that's the case, even if Norris wins, he's going to be winning by small margins. Verstappen is going to be second or third every time, even if Norris wins. And so, barring, as I said, something, catastrophic like a no points finish for Verstappen and a win from Norris in the same event, other than that, I just think it's a tall order. And you just can't help but think that he should have won it. If you look at the car advantage that Lando Norris has enjoyed for the past 7 or so races, it is inconceivable that he's not doing better in the championship. Inconceivable. Norris had a 50-something point deficit in Miami. Since Miami, he's had the best car by a mile. He's had 7 pole positions. He has had the fastest car. It is unquestioned. And guess what? With the fastest car and 7 pole positions, the deficit has grown. So in other words, 50-something points in Miami, low 50, it was like 52 points in Miami. It's now what, 57 or 59 points or something like that now. So in other words, even with the fastest car, the points gap has grown. I can't see that as being an endorsement of Norris's capabilities. I mean, we've already gone over the fact that his team has let him down. I think Zach Brown has fucked him over, screwed him over royally. And in terms of like that thing with Piastri in Hungary and so on, so there's no question. But the truth is, Norris has choked. Norris has gotten 7 poles and only converted 1 to a win. He has choked on 6 out of his 7 pole starts. That is a damning indictment. You cannot argue with the figures. It is the reality. This was Norris's championship to lose, not Verstappen's to win. McLaren gave Norris the best car for this season, for the 2024 season, and he's not been able to convert that into consistent victories to put Verstappen backward. He just has not. Those are just the harsh facts. Anyway, 2 more races to go in the US, or North America, I should say, Mexico and Canada. Looking forward to, and Vegas, I should say, not Canada. Mexico and Vegas. I'm looking forward to them. I liked that Vegas race the last time. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I ended up thinking it was great. Looking forward to it. Hope we get a repeat of that. See you in Mexico.